Well, I think we're ready to go. But the radio show goes way too fast. Let's rock and roll. Hey everybody, Shaun Haney here for today's after show. Thanks a lot for tuning in and joining in all the fun. Of course, we are live when we do this after show, of course. This isn't something I pre-record and then try to pretend and sort of run it past you and be sneaky about it. We are live. So if you have any comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you for sure. Always enjoy the interaction with everybody out there. Of course, the purpose of this show is we kind of get through RealAg Radio, and I feel like I just kind of get going, and I'm sort of like, oh, we're done. It's over. I guess we'll have to wait till tomorrow. Well, we don't have to do that here. We can continue the conversation. Honestly, it doesn't matter how long we go. Typically, we're about a half hour, and look forward to recapping some of the stuff we chatted about today, because there's a couple takeaways for sure, especially it applies to the markets that I'll get to in a second. I want to mention that on Friday we will have a RealAg Politics show. We've got a great lineup of guests. We've got Karen Proud from Fertilizer Canada talking about fertilizer sanctions, fertilizer emission reductions, as well as a few other things in terms of the big announcement this week, government putting $100 million into BHP's big potash project they have going on in Jansen, Saskatchewan. Also be joined by Keith Curry from the CFA to give us an update. He was on the ground. He was over in Geneva, so he will talk to us about those WTO ministerial meetings. Is it possible they got anything accomplished? We'll also hear, who's are there? Oh, I know. The Minister of Agriculture and Forestry for Alberta, Mr. Nate Horner, will be with us, and he will talk about his concerns about Health Canada's possible push to label, like put a warning label on the front of package for beef, which I have given my 2 cents. I think that is ridiculous. It is. There's a lot bigger things in the world to be concerned about, and quite frankly, beef just tastes frickin' good. Okay, let's get to it. Today we heard from Brian Voss with IntelliFarm. We talked about the markets. And what's interesting here, and it was actually from the after show, I believe it was Ken, who said, hey, you used to have a few more market people on the show. You kind of got out of that. I'd like it to come back. And so that's what we've done. So every Wednesday we brought in a new market analyst, or a different market analyst, I should say. And it's always great to get the different perspectives. And of course, I think every week is different, but in the sense, some of them all sort of follow a similar kind of thread. And what's interesting is that, and this wasn't intentional, so I'm going to take it as sort of maybe a bit of an indication, a signal, maybe. At least it's at least I've picked this up. Is that go back probably 5 weeks when we started, a lot of bullishness. Okay, here's the reason why we're going higher. Here, this is why. And what we have seen over the course of the weeks, I'm going to put on the screen here, you can kind of see how the market did today. Not terribly fabulous. Let's be honest. It's kind of mixed trade for the most part, as we saw corn up in the July 5 3/4 to 774. What did canola do today? Canola was up to $1,083.60. That's up $12.70. Or sorry, down. Sorry, it's red. Pay attention, Sean. So over the course of the 5 weeks, we moved from the uber bullish to more of a situation where last week was the first time where we had Ted Seifert from Zainarag Hedge on. And Ted was a little bit more, here's the reasons to be nervous. Okay? Like, just, I still think we could go higher, but, and we talked a little bit about the but. And then this week, we heard from Brian Voss, who, I don't know if I would call him a a bear. I don't think he's a bear. I think he provided his perspective based on his interaction with clients, and his comment is that he has executed more put options, bought more put options this year, and he gave it relative to how many years combined. And the put option being that insurance to the downside. You're buying insurance about it going lower. So if the market goes lower, below that strike price, then you're in the money, and you're basically able to execute on that, execute that call option, and you're getting that insurance payment. That is different than, say, and we talked about this on the show, that is different than selling a call, because in the case of buying the put on the physical inventory, you're still participating on the upside if it does go higher. Brian made the point that he sees more downside risk than upward potential. So, and what I like about Brian is that, Brian Voss with IntelliFarm, what I really, really enjoy about him is that he is totally willing to tell you, here's how I feel right now. Here's the stand I'm taking. He is not wishy-washy. He is not somebody that argues against himself, and you feel like you're in this big circular conversation when it comes to the markets. Brian Voss tells you how he feels. And he said today, I see more risk of the market going to the downside than potential for it to go higher from this point, because as he said, the market has run out of bullish news. And one thing that is really hard to get our head wrapped around is, what does all this mean? This idea of getting the grain out of Ukraine, where does all that stand? Is it real? The Biden administration's talking about building storage, basically putting up storage on the Polish border. So yeah, I guess good for bin manufacturers. We'll see if all of that kind of comes to fruition. It's really hard to get a good handle on what exactly is happening out of that region. Just pulling up for you here, all these ads. Do you ever get annoyed by all the ads on bar chart? I do. I'm going to fully admit that. I do. Let's look here. There you go. This is December corn. What we're looking at here, 721 down a quarter today. So we're definitely off those highs at like 763 and 3/4. Back on June 1st, we bounced off of 683 and a quarter. We're now up to 721. So we're kind of in the mid-range of that high and low since the middle of, or really the beginning of May. And so Brian, I thought Brian provided some good perspective here. And what's interesting, we got the Farmer Rapid Fire tomorrow on RealAg Radio, and I always enjoy asking the farmers about how are you approaching this market? And don't get me wrong, I don't think there is rights or there's a wrong way. And, in hindsight, we will always look back and say, well, you were wrong. But I think in this market, based on your cropping conditions, there's not a lot of easy answers. And so I always like to ask about how they're mitigating risk. How are they managing it? I don't need to do a Real Agri-Studies survey to tell you that very few people are using options in terms of their risk management strategy. There's a lot of people that really rely on that forward pricing delivery contract with the grain company. That really is the go-to. Now, I've said it before on the radio show on RealAg Radio that I grew up in on a farm where we had a feed yard, and I think a lot of the options and taking positions in the futures market and the currency market, those were things that a feed yard, I think just they're a little bit more in tune with it, a little bit more of a common practice. Not to say they're great at it. That's a whole different discussion. But it's a little bit more common. On a grain farm, it's less common. specifically a grain farm, I think, in Western Canada. We could probably blame the wheat board for that. By the way, did you know that is the 10-year anniversary, I believe, this coming up August 1st. But so I'm always into, and it's interesting because a lot of Brian's clients would be Western Canadian based. They would be, especially in that heart of where he was from in Manitoba. So this is a little bit of an indication. And, he said, I have bought more put options this year than X amount of years, added all up together. So it does show that there are more and more people in some of these areas taking advantage of some of these strategies. You could let me know. I'm interested. Do you use options? Is this something that you dip your toes into? Is this something that you feel is effective? Maybe they're too expensive, because that's one of the things you hear lots is that options way too expensive. I don't know. It's also expensive. Potentially do nothing because you're worried about the production in your field, and the market slides lower, and you didn't do anything. Because, and rightfully so, there's a lot of people that were really hurt last year in some regions in terms of penalties on grain contracts. And so they're a little bit timid this year to make that same mistake twice. Now, we've seen some moisture now in pretty much the bulk of the prairies. Manitoba, of course, way too much. But even the Palliser Triangle now, we've got some rain here this week. And so does that change the mindset of producers in terms of how they market this crop? There are 2 previous years that Brian mentions in the interview today from the show. And we're going to post the interview on realagriculture.com. We'll also, of course, you can download the podcast if you missed it at wherever you get your podcasts. There also is a replay of RealAg Radio at 7 a.m. Eastern the next morning. So tomorrow morning you can hear the interview again. But Brian, when it comes to the weather, we always refer to, what year will this be like? Is this going to be like 84, 93, 47? What year is this going to be like? So we have these comparisons, and I'm always amazed how farmers remember the past years. My grandfather Haney used to always be like, "Oh, yep, this reminds me so much of 44," and I'd be like, "Okay, well." Either you've got a very good memory or you're full of shit and just making years up, because who is going to call you on that? But he liked to reference the years. Brian referenced from a marketing perspective 08 and 13. And his comment is that this year right now in 22, from a market action perspective, feels eerily like 08 and 13. And I haven't had time post-show because we came right here on the air. I would love to look at what exactly happened specific to those years, and what can we learn from that? What are some of the things that from some of those past years? What happened? Because every year is somewhat different, but there are some similarities, and we do like to do those comparisons. What are some of those things that we could take away from it? We also heard today about a new Kloss tractor from Drew Fletcher. That was pretty cool. They're going to be unveiling that tractor at Ag in Motion, as well as the Farm Progress Show south of the border in August. Then we heard from David McInnes, and David talked about the sustainability score. More specifically, what they are calling it is what is it here? The National Index on Agri-Food Performance. I have to admit, I am still a little bit confused about what the objective is about this sustainability score and this indexing. It sounds very interesting. 86 different partners. I did call him a leadership Moses to bring together 86 groups to agree on anything, which I thought was myself being a little bit comical. But if we're not applying a score to a product, and we're not rating a company, or we're not rating a farm, what is the index actually doing, and what is the practical, purposeful use of it? Encourage you to check out that interview and let me know. I know the definition of sustainability is one that bothers you immensely because you tell me about it every time we bring up sustainability. So we'll have to see where all that goes. There's a big feature in the Globe and Mail actually about that and about what they are doing. I'm curious. This actually, I'm going to suggest this tomorrow at the RealAg content meeting. A new poll. I like polls. And the poll, what are you the most tired of hearing about? Okay? Are you the most tired of hearing about, what can we put in the poll? We got sustainability. Is that one you're tired about hearing about? Climate change. We'll add that one to the list. I'm writing these down as we do this. Climate change. We're sick of that one. What else could we put? Inflation. We just kind of started that. We're probably already sick of that because that one hurts, especially in the pocketbook. Supply chain crisis. Put that one down. What else are we sick of hearing about? COVID. Well, we definitely have COVID. That might be the winner. So things we are sick of hearing about: sustainability, climate change, inflation, supply chain crisis, and COVID-19. Are those that might be the whole list? Is there any more? Let me know if there's more. There's got to be more. You can't have too many options in the poll, but things that we are sick of hearing about: sustainability, climate change, inflation, supply chain crisis, and COVID-19. I think that's the RealAg poll for next week. I think we just did this. We don't even have to, tomorrow we don't even have to go to the RealAg content meeting because we figured it out here on the RealAg after show. Let me know how you feel about that. Top news. There was a story that there's a story we didn't get to in the show that I want to talk about, but I think we need to talk about what has happened with interest rates. And I said on the show today that I am detecting from my friends, people I'd visit with at the ballpark when we're there with the kids. I don't think the general public they've really got their head around about how bad this is all lining up to be from the economy inflation perspective. Okay, so we saw the Federal Reserve approve the largest interest rate increase today since 1994. Since 1994. That's like going back to when Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg put out The Chronic. That's how far back we are going. I think actually that is the same year. It signaled it would continue lifting rates this year at the most rapid pace in decades as it races to slow the economy and combat inflation that is running at a 40-year high. We talked a couple of days ago, it was Monday, about the fact that Manulife put out some data. 1 in 4 Canadians cannot afford their house if interest rates go higher. Here's the deal. They're going higher, everybody, and they're not stopping where they currently are. The question is, how far do they go? Central banks are concerned about the fact that they don't want to overshoot this, but I saw on CNBC today that Jerome Powell said in his presser that they feel it's important to be aggressive early here in this time period. Inflation is clearly not transitory. We can continue to talk about that in 2020 hindsight. Powell said, what did he say here? I do not expect moves of this size to be common. He also said that, there was the 18 officials who talked about that we could see another, and this is in the U.S., another 1.75 percentage point increase between now and the end of the year. So, if you didn't think that things were getting expensive, you're making the same mistake that people like Yellen and Powell did when they kept on talking about it being transitory. Your dollars are about to be worth a whole lot less. There's no other way to argue against it. I said on the show that my wife and I talked earlier today, and we have 3 teenage kids, 19, 17, and 16. My daughter's just about to, my daughter's just about to turn 18, and it's we're gonna have a sit down with them. We're gonna talk about what's kind of in front of is from a household perspective, and how they so they understand, because they a lot of these kids have never experienced this. Well, shit, I can't. I have. Like, I'm what am I, 43? I don't remember the 80s at all. Like, what context do I have besides people talking about it like I was at a museum, right? So this is real. And I'm going to make sure that even my teenage kids, because I know they won't talk about this in school, so you got to do it at home, and try to make sure that they understand kind of what is happening, and food is going up and gas, and put it in context what's happening, so that I think more people should be doing that kind of stuff, because I find when I talk to our friends, there's complete, like, they just don't, it hasn't really sunk in yet. What do we got here? Question from Richard. Are the good times really over for good? Well, they're not over for good, Richard, but boy, is there trouble on the horizon. Like, really trouble on the horizon. I would say that, we always joke with Calvin about talking about inflation on the panel on Fridays. I would say in the last month is when it's really, really became much more tangible. You go to Costco, you spend $600. It's now like $800. It feels like it's now $800. Like, it feels like it's adding up very, very fast. Lara, hey Lara, how are you doing? Good to see you. Lara says shit is going to hit the fan, and waiting for the housing market to respond. Lara, I am too. You'd have to think with some of those Manulife numbers that if there are people that cannot afford their house, they have to sell the house that they're in and get into something cheaper. And we've been in a situation where there's been no houses on the market. Demand has been more than supply. And if that goes very quickly like this, where there was way more supply than demand, and a part of that is people have to sell because they can't afford the payments, then what happens is it pushes prices lower. So, I was having lunch with a friend yesterday, and I said, if I was in that position where I felt today that, hey, the rates are going higher, and if they go that 1.75% percentage points higher in rates, we're really underwater. I would, why wait? Get out ahead of it and sell today. And he's like, I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. And I was like, okay. Lara says, seems like house sells in our neighborhood every single week, and it's been like that for a year. Inventory is incredibly low. Yeah, demand has been like unreal. And Lara, you're in Calgary. Just imagine a place like Vancouver, or I was reading a story about Phoenix. Like, what's been happening is that the market is so hot that it's basically you don't even go to see the house. You just put an offer in. And investment firms, hedge funds are buying up like blocks of houses. Locals, people that actually want to live in the house, or they can't even compete with the over the market price that is being offered. And those companies are basically putting those houses into the rental market, because Phoenix obviously is a place that people go to rent a house. So I don't mean to be like the negative nanny here, but it's I think there's reasons to definitely be concerned for sure. Now, there was another story I wanted to get to and tell you about. Oh, here's one to watch out for. We read this one on the news, and that is Caterpillar. Okay? So Caterpillar's latest manufacturer moving to Texas. Caterpillar is moving its headquarters from Chicago, Illinois to Irving, Texas, a suburb of Dallas, following the footsteps of major manufacturers that have relocated in the past year. Texas, lower taxes. Let's be honest, a little bit better weather. The move is a blow to Illinois, home to the manufacturing giant with more than 107,000 employees globally for nearly a century. Caterpillar was based in Peoria for many decades before shifting its headquarters to Deerfield, a Chicago suburb, in 2018. what kind of hit home for me here is that my brother-in-law used to play. This is going back 20 years, but he played for the Peoria Rivermen, and their logo, like the cat logo, was all over their uniform. So that is going to be a huge blow to that whole area. And Chicago's no small city. It is with the third largest in the country, I believe, fourth largest. And this is just another example of we saw like Tesla going to Texas. Texas, it's attracting some business. It's a part of that is the taxes. If you compare taxes probably in Illinois, taxes in California to Texas, it's Texas for the win when it comes to that kind of a situation and being open for business. And finally, we didn't get to this on the show. Maybe Friday. This is one that Richard's got a good question. Richard always brings good questions. Do you think Elon Musk will ever dabble in agriculture? If so, how do you think he would approach it? That is Richard. That's a good question. He seems willing to dabble in anything. Is it just me, or do you think that like this whole Twitter acquisition thing has been a kind of a joke? Like he really never ever wanted to buy it. Does it kind of feel that way? He's an odd duck, and it's probably putting it really mildly. He's. I sometimes wonder if the cheese has sort of slid off the cracker there. Lara says, I wouldn't be surprised if he's already dabbling in ag. Another good point. He's already had a major impact on agriculture, and that's Starlink. Think about it, right? Like maybe the Tesla truck will. I don't know. I don't know how rocket ships, unless we're going to farm the moon. But if you think about it, his technology of Starlink and the low Earth orbit satellites has had. If you're in that band of the northern U.S., southern Canada, if you're in that band where you can get Starlink, because I know we have it at our cabin in BC, and it's lights out. It's like a game changer. You go from using just really BS technology where you sort of get by, it's spotty, it's crappy. You go to Starlink where you can do 100 up or 100 down, whatever, 200. And it kind of floats around. It's the more people get on it, I think there's concerns that it will slow down. I think that's had a major impact on agriculture because it's given people in rural communities the opportunity to actually have true high-speed internet, not something we call high-speed, and it really isn't. Yeah, like people in rural communities were getting high-speed under the speeds that urban people had like 8 years ago. Total disadvantage. Total disadvantage. Richard says Bill Gates is buying up land in the U.S., probably in California or probably in Canada too. Keeps it very low key. He does. The other one is, what is his name? I think, what does he own? The Gang Ranch. He owns the Douglas Lake Ranch in BC. The guy that owns the LA Rams and Arsenal. He's married to the Walmart, one of the Walmart heirs. He's another guy that's bought up a lot of ranch. You look at the amount of ranch land that has been bought in Montana by very ultra rich. I always wonder what Gates is up to. And not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but is the idea to farm, because he's also in favor of things like synthetic meat. So is this like his way to take land out of production? Will it really be farmed? Is his plan to just give it away to people to try to give small farmers the opportunity? I think the jury is still out really on what people like Gates are up to when it comes to farmland. He's kept it low key, but he is the largest. I believe he's the largest arable farmland owner in the U.S. So this has been kind of a real trend that we have been seeing over the past years. What does he do with those holdings? And we have so much focus on the the farmer's ability to purchase land and, making it pay, how do you ever compete with Bill Gates? It's similar to what I talked about the housing market in Arizona, where the Arizona Republic had that story where hedge funds are buying up all the houses. It's sort of like Bill Gates. Forget about competing against the neighbor that just moved from Holland, or the super farmer that is buying up all the land in the area, or the Hutterite colony, or whatever it is. Try competing against Bill Gates, because none of those people have the money that Bill Gates does, or somebody like Bill Gates. Good stuff. Okay. Let's take that off. Let's do this. And here's the story I wanted to mention. Is the Colorado River. This is from the LA Times. Major water cutbacks loom as shrinking Colorado River nears moment of reckoning as the West endures another year of unrelenting drought worsened by climate change. The Colorado River's reservoirs have declined so low that the major water cuts will be necessary next year to reduce risks of supplies reaching perilously low levels, a top of federal water officials said on Tuesday. This is from Pro Farmer. The challenges we are seeing today are unlike anything we have seen in history. I'm not suggesting that farmers stop farming, but rather that they carefully consider crop selection and make the investments needed to optimize irrigation efficiency. That's good advice, but maybe. And here's the irony here. This is from the general manager of the Southern Nevada Water Authority, which supplies the Las Vegas area. He continued by saying, by reducing their use of the Colorado River water, agriculture entities are protecting their own interests. Here's an idea. Why don't we, tell that to golf courses? And I love golf. But who should we be telling to find more efficiency and maybe consider using less water? A golf course in the desert or somebody producing food? Just saying. Or maybe that subdivision that's going up because there's another market that is extremely hot when it comes to the real estate market. Okay, appreciate everybody tuning in today. It was a lot of fun, covered a lot of ground. Appreciate the questions, the comments, the thoughts. I feel this is, I love doing this. We get off the air on, lawns are the worst in the suburbs. You're totally right, Richard. I agree wholeheartedly with you. This is a lot of fun because we get off the air on RealAg Radio, and I just kind of feel like we just want to keep going. So if you do miss the show, I encourage you to check out the RealAg Radio podcast. And of course, if you have that Sirius subscription, you can listen on Rural Radio 147. Friday, we will have a RealAg Politics episode. We have 3 great guests. Kelvin Hepner will join me, and we'll cover a lot of ag policy issues impacting Canadians and our U.S. listeners as well. Hey, thanks everybody for getting real and getting connected with Real Agriculture. As always, have yourselves a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.